How is that not leading the news? One of the jurors reportedly sported a t-shirt that says BLM. Apparently, he also ran a podcast covering George Floyd and other racial justice issues. Well, it leaves you with a pretty strong case for a mistrial. Okay, so this leads to certain predictable effects. When you castigate the cops as racist, when you suggest that the cops are a big danger to Americans, there's a video that I think is kind of important because we very rarely talk about the behavior of people when they interact with police officers. You know, we hear very often that if you're black in America, you have to teach your kids, keep your hands at 10 and 2 on the wheel, treat the officer with respect. First of all, you should teach your kids to do that regardless of your color, because the cop is armed and you presumably are not. The cop is an officer of law and you presumably are not. And you should be treating police officers with respect. That is a simple thing to do. But put that aside for a second. When you incentivize people to treat cops badly, that is not a good idea. And it does lead to worse behaviors. So, for example, here's a California woman who was pulled over for, she had her cell phone up, which is a violation in California. You're not allowed to have your cell phone to your ear in California. I know because I used to live there. She was pulled over, and this exchange just says pretty much everything about how it is seen fit to treat police officers in America right now.
Why are you harassing me?
You are correct. I pulled you over
because you're a murderer.
Because
yes, I started to record because you're a murderer.
You can't be on your cell phone while you're driving.
I wasn't on my phone. I was recording you. Can you call your supervisor, please?
I already did. He's on his way.
Good, because you're a murderer.
Okay. Do you have that picture?
You scared me and made me think you were going to murder me.
Okay. Well, I'm sorry you feel that way.
Well, that's not just a feeling. You're a murderer.
Okay. Thank you.
And I'm perfectly legal, and I'm a teacher. So there.
Congratulations.
Murderer. You're a murderer.
Okay, now, quick thing here. One, typically a thing that you cannot say to murderers and get away with being alive is you are a murderer, right? Things that people never said to Charles Manson, right? I'm sorry. That's such an absurd say. I'm a teacher. Gives a flying. Okay, but that sort of behavior is now being incentivized. Like this lady thought for sure she was going to go viral, right? That's why she's taping it. She thinks she's going to put that up on TikTok and she's going to go viral. Look at how I spoke back to this murdering pig officer. Okay, that sort of attitude is not going to either get you anywhere in life or going to incentivize the kind of behaviors that lead to a lowering of crime. You think police officers want to be treated this way? You think police officers want to get into situations, and this is a pretty mild situation. The lady's not actually physically resisting arrest, for example. But to believe that that doesn't happen is to ignore the evidence on the ground. Okay, and this has now infused so much of our conversation, right? The anti-police, anti-American rhetoric has infused so much of our conversation that we're supposed to ignore relevant stories in favor of irrelevant stories. We're supposed to pay attention to this lady's feeling about this cop. We're supposed to pay attention to police officers doing the right thing and shooting people who are threatening other people. But we're not supposed to pay attention to actual active apparent malice. Okay, so this brings us to what in any normal situation would lead the news. Right? This story would lead the news. Here's the story, and it has not appeared, so far as I'm aware, on any network news show. I believe it has not been covered at CNN. It's an unbelievable story. Okay, so the most glorified criminal justice trial since Rodney King was the Derek Chauvin trial. It was the number one trial covered in America. The Derek Chauvin situation spawned riots and protests. The protests involved somewhere between 15 and 26 million Americans, according to studies. And then, a couple weeks ago, Derek Chauvin was convicted on all counts. And I said at the time, I think you could get to manslaughter, maybe. I find it very difficult to believe that a jury could get to second and third degree murder after 10 hours of consideration with no questions asked of the judge. I just thought it is very hard for me to believe that you get there without any preconceived notions. After 3 weeks of testimony, you come in with a conviction on all counts, second, third degree murder and manslaughter on the basis of the evidence that was provided without asking any questions, right? In 10 hours. I found that very difficult to believe. And people were very upset with that. How could you say that? This is how the criminal justice system works, to which I pointed out, well, if it had come out the other way in 10 hours, you would have said that it was biased that way. So obviously you just don't like the outcome. What I'm saying is, if they'd considered this for a week and then they'd come back with that verdict, I still would have thought they got it wrong, but at least I would have thought they considered the evidence. You come back in 10 hours after a 3-week trial on something like that, and it doesn't seem to me that the jury did a great job considering the evidence, just on the basis of the sort of outside on the basis of the outside data. Well, now we know that at least one of these jurors was apparently an activist. According to Daily Wire, one of the jurors who served on the murder trial of former Minneapolis police officer Derek Chauvin reportedly sported a Black Lives Matter t-shirt with a reference to the death of George Floyd, seemingly challenging what the juror told the Chauvin defense team during jury selection. According to a report from the Post-Millennial, now public juror Brandon Mitchell, 31, is seen in a Facebook post published in August 2020, right, well before the trial, August 2020, wearing a hat that says Black Lives Matter and a t-shirt that says BLM with the words, "Get your knee off our necks," a reference to the death of Floyd. The photo was posted by a Travis Mitchell with the caption, "The next generation being socially active representing in D.C., my son Marzell, my nephew Brandon Reen Mitchell, and brother Maurice Johntinus Johnson." Here's the photo in question. It was tweeted out by Jack Posobiec. Also, this person apparently runs a podcast. Mitchell told the judge on March 15th, when he was asked if he was aware of the Chauvin case and George Floyd, he said, quote, he'd heard some basic info about trial dates, etc. from the news, but not the sort of information that would keep him from serving as an impartial juror. Apparently, he also ran a podcast covering George Floyd and other racial justice issues. He then went on to give an interview to the Wall Street Journal, in which he described how he decided to go public to help push for change, and told of his many negative experiences dealing with law enforcement when he was younger. If Mitchell was truly unfamiliar with the George Floyd case before joining the jury, he certainly made up for lost time in a hurry, says Hot Air. But that seems patently preposterous. So, where exactly does that leave us now? Well, it leaves you with a pretty strong case for a mistrial. I mean, if this guy is the juror, which apparently he is, how is that now leading the news? I mean, I honestly don't understand. How does that not lead the news? Let's say that Derek Chauvin had been acquitted, and it turns out one of the jurors had been wearing a Blue Lives Matter t-shirt with a shirt that said Derek Chauvin is innocent. Do you think that that might be the cause of some consternation? But have you seen this story covered anywhere? Anywhere? Because again, the narrative must be pursued at the cost of the facts, at the cost of individual justice, if need be. Pretty astonishing stuff. I hope you enjoyed that clip from The Ben Shapiro Show. If you did, go ahead and hit that subscribe button so you stay up to date with all our future content.